But she went, when it got too hot and too many bombs, she went back to Rostock and to stayed with her parents. They still lived then.
And what did she have to say about your husband staying with
Oh,
you?
the same thing. I mean, that, you know, she liked him very much and she loved him. And
Was she afraid for you that if anybody?
yeah, sure.
Do you remember any discussion?
But she never would say a word that she was against it. That's the way it was, and we just hoped and prayed it will end well, and we took our choice.
Were you able to communicate with your father during the course of the war?
Yeah, we had some, with my father and with my sister was already in America. They left 38, I think. The Red Cross had little kind of letters where you could write one or two sentences. We are well, and I always could write them. We three are well. You know, they knew that Heinz was still alive. Of course, they knew all about it. And that we got, okay, I quite have some left. It's quite interesting. Doesn't say much, but my sister tells me about her children, and my father said they are well. So that was the communication we had with the family. Yeah.
And your sister was single when she went to the United
No,
States?
no, she was married and she left with her Jewish husband and the baby. They left, I think it was 38.
And they left why?
I think they left 38.
And they left why? Because of the husband being Jewish?
Yeah, they were smarter. He had got his visa before my husband, and they had trouble too at the border. They almost got caught, but they made it and went left for America. Yeah.
What was the basic feeling about intermarriage at that time? Do you
About
recall?
America?
About intermarriage. Was that a rare thing, or?
No. It wasn't. It was done. It was. Nobody thought about it. You know, we were all German. So we have a different religion. So what? No, there was. At least as far as I know, probably some people did. I'm sure they did. But like here too, you know, we are open-minded. I don't care if my daughter would marry a colored person, or you know, things like that. But that time, no, nobody would think anything.
Okay, so tell me what happened when you heard the war ended. When was that?
When the war ended, we were in that bunker with a hole in the middle, and they came now street by street, fighting street by shooting from one building to the other. And so we thought, well, we better go home. We were about 2 blocks away. Go in our basement, because then they didn't have any more bombs, because they would kill their own people. So it was only street fighting then.
What was, about when was this? About what?
That was 45.
About when?
Well, there was the first few months. It was the war ended, I think, in May. Yes, it was the beginning of May. And so we decided we better leave the bunker and go home in our basement. And we expected the Russians to come, but it was tough because we had to run crosswise to not be. Anyway, we made it home, and we were. Of course, we couldn't go up in the apartment. There was shooting. We went in the basement, and all the other people from the building were in the basement too. And we had already there in the basement bunk beds. So every family had their beds and in different rooms. And then one day, probably the next or the 2 days after, the Russians came down the stairs. We played cards. My mother and my husband and I, we played cards down there. Scott. And the first Russians were nice. They didn't say a word. They just said hello and left again. But then the next ship the Russians came, they were terrible. They were so. The first men they wanted to rape. They were hungry. So I had my bunk bed, the upper bunk bed, and I had a big feather bed. I had brought that down. And I was under that feather. My husband was in the front of me, and I was under the feather bed towards the wall for 3 days. As long as the Russians came, they raped every woman in the building. Old or young, they didn't care. It was terrible. There was one nurse, she was 84 years old. She never was married or anything, and she died from it. I mean, the Russians were terrible, awful. They stole everything. Then another ship came and they gave us something. They stole from somebody else and gave it to us. They, in my lab, it was on the first floor, they opened all the drawers and, how can I say that politely, to fit it in. You know, they ruined everything. They made fire in the middle of the kitchen. And they didn't know how to work a stove, I guess. They didn't know how to work the bathroom. They built latrines all over. You know, they were, I don't know where those people came from. They had no idea about civilization. They were like, animals would do it. I don't know what, so anyway, we made through that. And then, thanks God, the Americans came. And since we lived in the sector which became American kind of, so we were safe. Before that, we had tried to learn Russian. We took some lessons, but we gave up. It's a very hard language to learn. I thought if we know a couple words Russian, maybe we make it through the border somewhere. So, but then the Americans came.
How long was it before the Americans came?
I could not tell the exact date, maybe 1 month or so, maybe a little longer. I really don't remember. And once the Americans were there, you know, Berlin was divided in 4 parts. I don't know, you know that, French and Russian and American and English. So we were lucky we were in the American sector. And from then on it went upwards. I got a real apartment with real furniture, and my husband worked, he had learned before to be photographer, to work darkroom. So he could work, I had my work.
When was it that you got married?
We went to, the war ended in May, and we went very soon after, we went to the office where so he said, you come back in a month, now I'm too busy with death certificates, there are too many dead people around. So we had to go home, and we came back in June, and we got married in June.
And who married you? A government official?
Yeah.
Did you have any kind of religious ceremony at all?
No, there was nothing. There was no church, there was nothing. You can't believe how Berlin was. There was nothing. There was nothing to eat. There was no stores, no nothing. We tried to took even the rubber from the bicycle, so we tried to use the bicycle we found to go somewhere. We, I don't know how we lived. I know I was, because we had only that ration, I was once so starved, I couldn't get out of bed anymore. So that means I could not go with my ration to the bakery and get my rolls. So my husband went out and said, I have to find something. So he knew we had some Danish friends, and they had a big house outside. He walked there, and of course everything was gone. But he found in their basement a little jar of jellied soup concentrate. You know, there's things you make a soup from. He brought that home, and I ate that. And that gave me the strength. I would have been dead. It gave me the strength to get out of bed and go and get my rations for the rolls or whatever I had.
And did your husband try and find his mother at all after the
No.
war?
No, there was no way that there was nobody living there. And the funny story about our wedding, where we went out, there was no water anywhere either. I mean, there was nothing, period. So he went out with a pail to get some water. And he came back, what he saw where he walked to wherever the pump was, there was somebody, all stores were plundered. There was nothing in stores. But somebody found out that underneath a cellar of one of the stores, there was some bags, big bags of peas. So he went with the others. He went with his pail and dried peas, yellow peas. And he came home, instead of water, he had his pail half full of peas. but that meant something for us. Something to eat. So that was when we got married, we still had some peas left. So we ate pea soup for the wedding, and everybody was invited. We had a wonderful time. Finally, we were safe. And what we got for the wedding, the presents? Nobody had anything to bring. It was May, June, and everybody had roses. They all brought roses. My house was full of roses. All the friends, they ate the pea soup, and they had the roses. So the next day, the people from my building came. We saw we got all those roses for your wedding. I said, sure. Can I have some? What do you want the roses for? Oh, we dried the leaves and we smoked them. They smoked them. They didn't have tobacco either. I mean, nobody had anything. And they smoked that. So I gave, when they were dried, I gave all my nice roses away, and they dried them. I was not a smoker at that time.
Let me just back up one more.
Forget it.
Continuing on tape 3 with the interview of Edith Imbach, and it's the end of the war, but I wanted to ask you, your husband says that he was the 2 years in hiding. Was he able to go out during that period?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. We had to go to the bunker, and we went visiting friends. Yeah, kind of. He wasn't Jewish anymore, kind of. You know what I mean? He didn't wear, of course, he didn't wear anything, and we went only to places only if we had to. But we dared visiting friends. He had an aunt there, and I know he visited, he had a distant relative, and that must have been before, and he was Jewish, and he was the father of a friend of mine. She lives now here in Fort Lauderdale, and we visited him in a hospital in the basement. There was so full, one cot next to the other, and we could talk to him before he died there. So I don't know on what he died, but I was glad I could see him, and I could tell his daughter here later that I saw her father before he died, because she was already in America. So those little stories.
Okay. And when was it that you came to this country?
When? September 15, 1946. And I was 7 months pregnant. And my daughter, that was also funny. I had, as I said, I lived in Berlin. We lived in Berlin, happily married. We had jobs, we had work, we had everything, more or less. And one day a man came from the American consulate and said, do you still want to go to America? I said, sure, I want to go to America. I had enough of Germany. And my husband wasn't home. So he said, well, can you go tomorrow? I said, I can go tomorrow. He said, I see you are pregnant. I said, yeah, 7 months. Well, if you are 8 months pregnant, we can't take you anymore. So if you don't go now, you have to wait at least a year till you can go to America. So I said, of course, I go tomorrow. So my husband came home in the afternoon. I told him, come on, go packing. We're going to America tomorrow. He said, are you nuts? He didn't believe me. So we started packing. We started getting all our friends together. I had to get my business. I knew I had one woman, a friend of mine. She knew about my business. She could take over the business. We tried to sell things, furniture, and buy other things which we could take. I still have a little fur piece, stupid thing, which I bought. I thought, whatever. We could take only 10 German mark. We couldn't take any money to America.
And how had you gotten the visa? How had you gotten the
Well, we had that visa. That's
There
why
was
they
still
came
the
to us.
visa
Then after the war, it was in effect again. So that's why we could go. So they brought us to Bremerhaven, and where we had stayed a couple days. Because by that time, 46, there was a ship strike in America. But they had some troop transporter, and they put that into, they were not really allowed to, I guess, and when we landed in America, in New York, they had to go to Brooklyn to some obscure where they wouldn't know, the strikers wouldn't know. So anyway, we were on that ship to transport it. I was in one cabin with about 10, 12 women, and he was in a cabin with like for troops, 40, 50, bunks and all that. And it was stormy, but we were out of Germany. We were on our way to America, what we always wanted, and we were starved, and they had so much to eat on that ship. They had like cafeteria style, the big tables and benches, and then they had a jar of butter and jar of jelly, a jar of eggs, and you could eat what you wanted. And I was pregnant, I was hungry, and the funny thing is we didn't know peanut butter. So I asked one woman or somebody, what is that? We had peanuts we gave to the monkeys in the zoo. We didn't know peanut butter. And she said, that peanut butter, it's very good. So I said, what do you do with it? Oh, you eat it. You take a couple of tablespoons peanut butter and put it on the plate, and you take a couple of jelly, tablespoon of jelly, and you mix it, and you eat it. And I did that, and I got sick. I got sick, and how? So up to now, I cannot smell peanut butter. My daughter grew up without peanut butter sandwiches.
On the ship, they were all immigrants?
Yeah.
And do you know if there were a lot of Jews on the ship?
Yeah, but mostly Polish. Lots of Polish Jews. They must have come from, I think they must have been most of them Jewish, yeah. But others too. But I guess most of them were Jews. Yeah, were only immigrants on that ship, yeah.
Before you left Germany, had you heard about the camps then after the war? Did news come out about what had happened?
We heard rumors, but nobody we knew came back. No, nobody at all.
And was there any talk of what had occurred actually about the?
Oh, we knew that.
You knew it?
Then by that time we knew it. Yeah, that hardly ever everybody was killed. Yeah, by that time we knew, but nothing we could do about it. We just hope we make it so, and we did. We're lucky.
Okay. And what was your daughter's name?
Susan Helm.
And do you have grandchildren?
Hmm?
You have grandchildren?
I have 3 grandchildren. My oldest is Tobias. He's in the Marines. Right now he's on a ship somewhere in the Mediterranean. And he has a wife and a little son, TJ, and they live in North Carolina at the base. And I have a granddaughter. Her name is Antoinette, called Tony. She's married and lives here in Fort Lauderdale. And I have the 3rd grandson. He's a student at Broward Community College and lives with his mother. He used to live with his father for some years in the Orient, in Hong Kong. And he's spoiled because he had such a good life there. But he preferred then come back now and go to college in America because they had to leave Hong Kong and move the whole business to Malaysia.
And any great-grandchildren?
Hmm?
Any great-grandchildren?
That one little boy, yeah. He's 4.
And his name?
TJ, Taylor James.
When your husband and you had your daughter, had you discussed a religious, if you were going to raise your daughter with any religion?
Matter of fact, the first thing when we came to America, I had her christened because I was afraid it could happen here too, and I didn't want her to be in any way Jewish. It had nothing to do with my feelings, but I thought it would be safer. We were so scared. We thought, well, maybe it can happen in America too.
And did your husband ever practice Judaism after he got here?
He did what?
Did he ever practice Judaism after he got to this country, your husband?
No, he was not a religious person at all. No.
And besides having your daughter christened,
Good.
did she attend any religious training at all?
Well, not really. I mean, she was a Protestant like me, and we went to church occasionally. And I thought I can teach her to believe in God and choose her own religion when she grows up. I did not, as such, make much importance of religion. As long as you believe in a higher being, in God or whatever, that's my belief, and I try to give that to my daughter too.
And your sister who married a Jewish man, did she raise her children Jewish or non-Jewish?
Um, her son is Jewish and her daughter is not. Matter of fact, her husband is Catholic. Yeah.
Did your father have any other children with your
No.
stepmother?
No, no.
Okay. Before we close, is there anything else about your experiences during the war that I have not asked you about that you'd like to include?
But what?
Any other questions that I have not asked you that you'd like to include?
During the war? Not really. I think I told you. I mean, I cannot tell you about the daily terror we had. The, this how scared we were that we would be caught. That they were always when we were in a bunker. Could they come, and they did sometimes, and asked every man for identification, be Jewish, but it wasn't that important anymore. But being a deserter, why don't you work? That was scared. I know we were in one bunker, and there was a big column in the middle, and they came from this side, and he was hiding on this, and when they came around, he went like this. You know, I cannot describe those moments or times when you just hope for the best. You know, maybe pray, maybe not, maybe just hope. And we made it.
If you could leave a message to people in the future who had not experienced Germany during that period, what would you tell them?
I get some news from Germany all the time, and they try very hard in Germany to not let the children or the young people forget about the Holocaust. And I think that's a very good step. Here, there are still people around, I know, they don't believe that it happened. And that's one reason why I tell you all that, to do my little part of it, that it did happen and what I experienced. But it is very hard to, for the future, I would hope that there would be more love each other, be it race, be it religion, be it all, but it's just a hope, I know. And I'm not a person, I cannot change it. I just hope somebody might change it. But they should not forget the Holocaust. And I know they should not be so anti-Semitic here. There are lots of them, I know that. And you probably never can change that. But
is there anything you think anybody could do?
Hmm?
Is there anything that can be done, do you think?
Well, that's not, I cannot do anything. I mean, I did my little part, I hope, now. Where anybody can do something in a big scale, I don't know. I really don't know, because I think there will always be wars, there will always be enemies, there will always be parties all over the world. I don't know, one can hope, but I don't know I have much hope, no.
Okay, well, I want to thank you very much for telling your story to us today, and we'll do the pictures in just a minute.
Yeah, in this picture, this is me as being a baby. That means it must have been 1911. And behind me is my mother. Her name is Elizabeth Koch, née Wittenburg. And on the right side is my grandmother, Wittenburg Frieda. And on the left side is my great-grandmother. Her last name was Stabler. I do not know her first name. The date of the photo, about 1911. The place, Rostock in Mecklenburg. This is my sister and me when we were, of course, children. I must have been about 8 and she about 3. And it was done in Offenbach, where we lived at this time. This is my father on the left, and he belonged to some student juniority, full uniform. He studied in Berlin, I think, and that must have been taken in Berlin. I don't know the exact date. I couldn't tell you.
Approximately. approximately what date?
Approximately 85, maybe in the 20s. Yeah, something like that. No, it must. This is my father. That's quite an interesting picture. He is in the Zeppelin, and he wrote a postcard. This the whole thing. The picture is a postcard which he wrote to his father-in-law. So that's all I can say. I don't know exactly when it was. I don't know when the Zeppelin. Yeah, that is the other side of that postcard, and it's too bad I cannot make out the date. It would be interesting to know. I have no idea. I don't know how old. I would guess about 10 years
And his
old.
full name?
His Heinz, that time Heinz Imbach, and he changed it to Henry Imbach when he was in America. This is my mother-in-law. That means Heinz Imbach's mother. Her name was Elfriede, and she was just a wonderful person. I loved her so much.
What was the
At the time, I do not know. I got that picture from Heinz, and I do not know when it was taken.
approximately?
Approximately in the 30s, I would think. She looks like she is in the 70s. The place I do not know either. In Berlin, probably. This is my mother and my grandmother and me, and that must have been in Warnemünde, which is on the Ostsee, and the year must be about, I must have been a year or two old. I would say about 1913. This is my stepmother, the one my father married after my parents were divorced, and they went to London to live in Cardiff. Her name was Annie Cohn, and she was very good to us children. I liked her very much.
About what year was the picture taken?
The date, I would think in the 30s somewhere. I don't know exactly. This is my husband, Heinz Imbach, and me, and it was taken, I would think, in 39, like an official picture, and we look awful. I think we look much better in reality. The place, I don't know, Berlin probably. That is me, right in the building where I live, and ready to go to a concert. That must be a Sunday afternoon when we have the concerts, and I think that was last year. That means 1996. The place right here in the building, downstairs, in the hall.
Plantation, Florida. In Plantation, Florida?
In Plantation, Florida.